In the crowded, struggling streets of Southwood, 15-year-old Jordan Davis finds an old video camera and with it an unexpected power, the ability to frame the truth. When his raw, unfiltered footage of local injustice goes nationally viral, he is immediately celebrated as a hero yet targeted by powerful officials seeking to silence him. Forced to choose between the quick path to fame through sensationalism and the dangerous road of integrity, Jordan must learn the crucial craft of ethical storytelling to protect his family, empower his neighbors, and change his community from behind the lens. If you liked the video and have subscribed to my channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The humidity in Southwood didn't just hang, it pressed. It was a thick, breathing thing that clung to the brick walls and sweat from the concrete, making every August afternoon feel like wading through lukewarm water. For Jordan Davis, 15 years old and built like a question mark, the heat was the least of his burdens. The apartment he shared with his mother, Monique, and his 10-year-old sister, Tiana, was a third-floor box in a massive, decades-old building, its windows perpetually dusty from the exhaust of the four-lane arterial street below. His life was a predictable loop of grind and anxiety. The mornings were a hurried, silent scramble for the bathroom before Monique left for her double shift at the hospital laundry. The afternoons were a slog through textbooks that felt intentionally irrelevant to the world outside his window. And the evenings were spent guarding Tiana, a bright, relentless kid who already knew the difference between a promise and a lie, while trying to do homework on a folding card table pushed against a wall. School was a fortress of unspoken rules he couldn't master. The other students, faster and louder, seemed to navigate the social currents with a natural instinct that Jordan completely lacked. He was the quiet one, the one who saw everything but said nothing, his mind always running calculations. How much money is left on the EBT card? Did mom remember to pay the electric bill? How many more weeks until I can get a job, a real one? He didn't want pity, he just wanted a way out, or failing that, a way to make sense of being stuck. His grades were middling, and his future was a gray smudge on the horizon. One Saturday morning, Monique gave him $20 and a curt instruction: go find something useful, and get out of my hair for a while. She was cleaning out the small storage closet, a task she only undertook when the stress of her job had boiled over. Jordan hated yard sales. They felt like a public display of other people's discarded dreams. But obedience was the cheapest currency he had. He walked 5 blocks to the central street where a sprawling multi-family yard sale was taking place on a cracked asphalt lot. He picked through plastic bins of forgotten toys and stacks of warped vinyl records. The air was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and desperation. Just as he was about to give up and buy a bag of stale chips, he saw it. Tucked beneath a pile of mismatched electronic cables, inside a sun-faded canvas bag, was an old video camera. It wasn't sleek or modern. It looked like a brick of black plastic from the late 90s, the kind of relic his history teacher sometimes used to play grainy educational tapes. He picked it up. It had a comforting weight, a solid, tangible presence. The lens cap was missing and the tape door clicked open with a rusty protest. He found a charger and a battery miraculously attached. The woman running the table, a tired-looking grandmother with kind eyes, told him it was $5. It still works, she whispered conspiratorially. My son used to be obsessed with it. Jordan handed over the crumpled 5 and the camera, a Sony Handycam DCR V20, was his. Back in his room he plugged it in. The small, fold-out screen sputtered to life, displaying the date, 1999. He found a blank, forgotten mini-DV cassette inside, ejected it and quickly reinserted it. The lens whirred faintly. He held it up to his eye, peering through the small viewfinder. The world snapped into focus, framed by the hard edges of the plastic shell. It was an instant, unsettling shift. The chaotic mess of his room, the stacked clothes, the peeling paint, the faint smell of mildew, was suddenly organized, compressed, and isolated. It was later that evening, the sun bleeding a bruised purple into the Southwood skyline, that Jordan took the camera outside. He walked for hours. He didn't film the landmarks the city brochure advertised. He didn't look for beauty. He looked for truth. He filmed the cracked pavement of the basketball court where the netting was long gone, forcing the players to call their own tense, honorable shots. He filmed Mr. Henderson, the retired mechanic, sitting on an overturned milk crate, methodically polishing the same ancient Harley-Davidson he'd never ride again. He filmed the sheer, beautiful frustration on the face of a street musician whose saxophone only stopped screaming when a police car rolled by. He filmed the shadows of the elevated train tracks, the rhythmic, metallic screech that was the soundtrack to his life. He filmed a mother dragging 2 grocery bags, their plastic handles cutting deep lines into her hands, while she simultaneously tried to keep a toddler from running into traffic. He noticed things he'd never seen before. The way the last rays of sun could turn a discarded bottle into a shard of brilliant, meaningless light. The way people's eyes flicked to the ground when a new car drove by. The almost military efficiency with which the homeless man on the corner folded his cardboard mattress at dawn. Holding the camera, he wasn't just Jordan Davis, the quiet, worried kid from the 3rd floor. He was an observer, a recorder, an intentional witness. When he pressed the big red rec button, the world submitted to the frame. The chaos, the hardship, the perpetual noise, it all suddenly had boundaries. He was the one choosing what stayed in and what was cropped out. For the first time in his life, he felt a powerful, almost frightening sense of control. He wasn't in the story anymore, he was the one telling it. He wasn't solving any problems, but he was capturing them, preserving them, treating them with a gravity no one else in his life seemed to possess. The camera wasn't just an object, it was a buffer, a mask, and a spotlight. He got back to the apartment well past curfew. Monique was asleep on the couch, the glow of the television flickering across her tired face. Jordan slipped into his room and pulled the laptop, a dented hand-me-down from his aunt that barely ran, onto his desk. He connected the camera with a firewire cable, the tape whirring as the digital transfer began. He watched the footage back, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. On the screen, the streets of Southwood were no longer just a place of confinement. They were a vivid, complicated stage, and the people he knew were the fierce, unscripted actors. The camera had transformed the mundane into the monumental. He leaned forward, squinting at the small screen, a new kind of hunger tightening his stomach. This wasn't just homework, this was purpose. This was the start of something. The old, beaten-up laptop groaned whenever Jordan pushed it, its cooling fan wheezing like an asthmatic old man. It was slow, agonizingly slow, but it worked. The software, a pirated, decade-old video editor, was clunky and counterintuitive, but it was the only tool he had to wrestle his footage into a narrative. Jordan was a meticulous student of the visible world, and now he was applying that same discipline to the digital canvas. His process became a ritual. As soon as Monique and Tiana were asleep, the small room was transformed into his studio. He'd put on cheap headphones not for the sound, but to block out the rhythmic thrum of the city outside and the occasional creak of the building settling. He'd spend hours reviewing the raw tapes, the 10 seconds of footage of 2 kids laughing over a stolen ice cream cone, the prolonged, frustrating wait at a bus stop under a flickering neon sign, the quiet desperation etched into the face of a man asking for change. The editing taught him a fundamental lesson. Every frame tells a truth, but the sequence tells a story. He quickly realized that the power wasn't just in what he filmed, but in what he kept, what he cut, and how he placed the pieces next to one another. He learned to compress the tediousness of waiting into a quick, poignant montage, and how to use the sound of the elevated train to punctuate a moment of silence. He was unknowingly learning the language of cinema verite. One of his first substantial pieces was a sequence he titled, simply, Rhythm. It focused on the basketball court. He filmed the local kids not just playing but living on the court, the graceful, nearly balletic leap of a scrawny teenager sinking a shot from downtown, the argument over a foul that dissolved into laughter, the older guys, their knees shot and their pride intact, schooling the younger ones in the dying light. He juxtaposed these moments with quick cuts of the dilapidated surroundings, the rusting chain-link fence, the faded graffiti that read Southwood United, and the sound of distant sirens that no one on the court even flinched at anymore. The message was implicit. Life persists, beauty thrives, even within the confines of struggle. He filmed the street performers, the 2 older women who sold handmade jewelry near the subway entrance, their wrinkled hands moving with practiced, tireless grace, and the young breakdancer whose performance was less about tips and more about an urgent, physical need to move. He captured the harsh realities too, the lines at the soup kitchen, the boarded-up storefronts, the discarded needles in the alley. But he always framed the struggle with the dignity of the people enduring it. He avoided the cheap pity of a poverty tour. He sought the resilience of a community. When he was finally satisfied with the first 3-minute clip, a piece of raw, unpolished but deeply felt work. He needed a place to share it. He didn't know anyone who would care or how to get it seen. He created an anonymous account on a fledgling video sharing platform. He didn't give it a clever name. He called himself Southwood Lens. He uploaded rhythm just before dawn, wrote a 2-sentence description. The streets have a pulse. This is what it sounds like. And then collapsed into an exhausted sleep. The first day it had 7 views. The next, 14. They were probably pity views from an automated feed or a couple of random users who stumbled across his niche tag. He checked the counter obsessively, a tight, nauseous knot in his stomach. The anonymity was a shield, but the low numbers felt like a collective shrug from the outside world, confirming his suspicion that his perspective didn't matter. Then on the 3rd day the number jumped to 31. And there was a single comment. It wasn't about the editing, the music choice, a public domain funk track he'd painstakingly sourced, or the shaky camera work. It was just 5 words from a user handle called @truthteller. Keep telling our story. The comment didn't praise his technique or his vision. It simply acknowledged the shared experience. It didn't treat the video as an artistic effort, but as an act of witnessing. Jordan read it again and again, his heart swelling with a strange mix of validation and duty. Our story. That meant someone else, someone inside this same struggle, saw themselves in his frame. That night he stayed up even later. The fatigue felt lighter, replaced by a focused energy. The camera in his hands no longer felt like a toy or a shield. It felt like a tool, an amplifier. He wasn't just documenting, he was communicating. He was serving a purpose that was bigger than his own quiet anxiety. The anonymity he initially sought to protect himself now felt like the right choice for his mission. He wasn't trying to make Jordan famous. He was trying to make Southwood visible. He started filming more intentionally. He spent an afternoon at the community center, capturing the struggle of the volunteers to keep the outdated computer lab running. He filmed the tireless, unsung work of the neighborhood watch patrolling the alleys with flashlights that seemed too small for the darkness. He was less interested in the shocking or the dramatic, and more interested in the ordinary heroism of persistence. The work gave him a new kind of confidence, one that had nothing to do with school or social standing. He walked the streets with his camera bag, his gaze steady, his finger near the record button. He realized his videos could do more than simply entertain a passing viewer. They could inform and inspire those who watched, both inside and outside the neighborhood. He didn't talk about the videos at home. They were his secret, his responsibility. Tiana was too young to understand, and he knew Monique would only worry. Exposure equals risk, he could already hear her saying. He kept the camera charged and the laptop running, fueled by cheap instant ramen and the quiet, revolutionary power of that single comment. He was ready for the next cut, the next chapter of the story he was learning to tell. He just didn't realize how quickly, or how violently, that story was about to accelerate. Jordan had developed a knack for being invisible. He could stand on a corner, his old handycam pressed against his eye, and people would often just move around him, assuming he was a student or a harmless eccentric. He used this anonymity as a shield, allowing him to capture moments of raw, unvarnished life without interference. He was looking for the pulse of the community, but he was about to capture its fever. The incident occurred during an unseasonably cold Tuesday afternoon, 3 blocks from his school. Jordan was on his way home, but a small, agitated crowd had gathered outside the old multi-story apartment building known locally as the Barracks. This building was famous for its low rents, structural problems, and the endless stream of eviction notices that fluttered onto its tenants' doors. Jordan didn't hesitate. He pulled out the camera and started filming. The scene was electric with tension. 2 city officials, dressed in ill-fitting suits and radiating an air of bureaucratic disdain, were attempting to serve final notices on a handful of long-term residents. Leading the tenants' resistance was Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, a formidable woman in her late 60s who had lived in the barracks for over 40 years. She wasn't shouting, she was arguing with a cold, devastating logic. The camera was his witness. Jordan filmed Mrs. Rodriguez standing her ground, her voice ringing with the authority of someone who had nothing left to lose. "You talk about fire code, but you ignore the mold in the walls that makes my grandson sick," she challenged the lead official, a man named Henderson whose face was quickly turning an angry shade of red. "You want to tear down our homes to build condos we can't afford. Don't hide behind a clipboard." The official, clearly rattled by her public confrontation, tried to physically push past her. It was a minor movement, a gesture of impatience, but Jordan's lens caught it perfectly, the heavy hand against the smaller woman's shoulder. It was the visual climax of the injustice. A moment later, 2 police officers called in for peacekeeping moved to block Mrs. Rodriguez. The official quickly slipped away to his waiting car. Jordan filmed until the last resident was escorted inside, the door slammed shut, and the official vehicle sped away. He walked home, his hands trembling. This wasn't just a slice of life, this was proof. He had captured the exact moment when institutional power clashed with human desperation, and the power had resorted to intimidation. He worked on the footage all night. He edited it tightly using the raw audio, Mrs. Rodriguez's powerful argument and the official's evasive, condescending replies, as the backbone. He added captions with key facts about the eviction history of the barracks, information he'd quickly researched online. He titled the video, "The Price of Progress, City Official Pushes Elderly Tenant During Southwood Eviction Standoff." He uploaded it at 4 a.m. He sent the link to a truth teller and then, on an impulse, he sent it to the inbox of a small local community activism blog he occasionally read. He then deleted the history, charged his battery, and went to school. When he checked his phone during lunch, his hands nearly dropped the device. The view count was not in the dozens or even the hundreds. It was 8,000. By the time he got home, it was over 25,000. The video was being shared across social media platforms, its title screaming the truth. The community blog had posted it with the simple, damning headline, "This is Southwood." The next morning, the number had exploded past 150,000. Then came the deluge. His anonymous inbox was flooded. There were messages of support, people offering legal aid to the tenants, demanding an inquiry and praising his courage. But mixed in were messages from people with official-sounding email addresses. Asterisk, "We need to discuss copyright and distribution rights. Call us immediately." Assignment editor, Channel 9 News. Asterisk, "This footage is crucial. We want to run it on the evening broadcast." Producer, The Daily Beacon. Asterisk, "Who are you? We are running a story on the official involved. We need an interview with the cameraman." Investigative reporter. He was being called a kid reporter, citizen journalist, and a voice for the voiceless. Jordan, the quiet, almost invisible kid, was suddenly the eye of a storm. The media pressure was immediate and overwhelming. Reporters started showing up outside the barracks, looking for Mrs. Rodriguez, but also asking around for the guy with the little camera. A producer from the local news station somehow tracked down his school, calling the principal and demanding an interview with the student who filmed the confrontation. Jordan's anonymity was cracking under the weight of his own success. He felt the cold shock of sudden visibility. The control he had cherished while filming had evaporated. He was no longer the sole editor of the story, now the story was editing him. The tension followed him home. Tiana, sensing the change in the air, kept asking why people were talking about the barracks on the news. Monique, coming home from a particularly grueling shift, saw a snippet of the video on a late-night broadcast. She looked at Jordan, her eyes wide with a mixture of pride and profound terror. "Jordan, was that you?" she asked, her voice thin. He could only nod. Monique pulled him close, holding him tightly, but her words were laced with fear. "You did a good thing, son. You showed them what's right. But you have to be careful. The people who get pushed, sometimes they push back harder. You don't owe them anything. Don't put yourself in danger." Jordan felt the weight of his mother's fear and the terrifying responsibility of his new platform. He was an accidental activist, a witness who had inadvertently become a primary source. He saw the potential for immense good. The city had already issued a statement promising a full review of the eviction process. His video was working. But as he stared at the email from the news station demanding a follow-up interview, he felt a knot of pure panic in his stomach. He was only 15. He didn't know how to talk to journalists, how to protect himself, or how to handle the sudden glare of the spotlight. He was just a kid with an old camera who had wanted to tell his neighborhood's story. Now, the neighborhood, the city, and the internet were demanding he step out from behind the lens and become part of the story himself. He was utterly, terrifyingly unprepared. The sudden heat of the spotlight was burning Jordan's anonymity away. The city officials, embarrassed and cornered by the undeniable evidence of the video, were mobilizing their counterattack. The narrative shifted almost instantly from city official acts poorly to is teenager using misleading edits for fame? The initial threats arrived not through official channels, but through the murky undercurrents of the internet. Jordan's inbox was no longer filled only with praise, now it contained venom. Anonymous accounts spammed him with warnings. You think you're a hero, kid? You're just a pawn. Shut this down before we shut it down for you. Stop interfering with legal process. There are consequences for libel. Be smart, stick to school. These weren't just angry comments. They were veiled but specific warnings that implied knowledge of his life and location. They made the world outside his camera frame feel suddenly much smaller and more dangerous. The pressure extended beyond the digital realm. A few days after the video exploded, a black sedan with tinted windows was parked across the street from his apartment building for nearly an hour. Jordan tried to convince himself it was nothing, a coincidence, but the feeling of being watched was a visceral, suffocating presence. The quiet kid who loved to observe was now the object of observation. The fear began to ripple through the neighborhood. Jordan wasn't the only person exposed. The officials who had been shamed were known for their petty vindictiveness. They controlled permits, inspections, and services. The fear wasn't for Jordan's grades, but for their own lives and livelihoods. Mr. Chin, the owner of the corner market who had always offered Jordan a discounted soda, stopped making eye contact. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose plight he had championed, asked him, through an intermediary, to stop talking to reporters, worried that any further media attention would only make her eventual eviction harsher. One evening, Monique sat him down at the kitchen table, the light from the bare bulb casting harsh shadows on her face. She hadn't cried in years, but her voice was strained and brittle. "Jordan, please listen to me," she pleaded, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "You have a good heart. You did right by Mrs. Rodriguez. But this isn't a school project. These are powerful people. They don't lose. They make other people lose. I work 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. If they find out who I am, if they find out where I work, they could make my life impossible. They could make our life impossible." Her fear was raw and justified. It wasn't abstract. It was about the electricity bill, Tiana's safety, and the precarious stability of their life. Jordan saw the lines of worry etched deeper around her eyes, and the shame of causing his mother this kind of terror was nearly unbearable. "I'm careful, Mom," he whispered. "I'm not saying my name. I'm just showing the video." "The video is enough, honey," she insisted, shaking her head slowly. "The truth has a price and we can't afford it right now. Please, take the videos down. Go back to being you. Be quiet." The silence that followed was heavy with Jordan's internal conflict. He had 2 choices, both equally agonizing. Option A, retreat. Take down the video, delete the account, and return to the quiet, predictable hardship of his previous life. This would protect his family, appease his neighbors, and end the unsettling feeling of being hunted. He would become invisible again. Option B, resist. Continue to film, continue to upload, and accept the personal risk and the burden of his mother's fear. This would mean standing up for the principle he now knew was essential. The lens doesn't lie, and silence helps no one. He spent that night staring at the ceiling, the sound of the city filtering through his cheap headphones. The camera lay on his desk, its black plastic shell feeling both comforting and accusatory. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's face, etched with decades of fighting. He thought about the kids on the basketball court, playing on hope and broken concrete. He thought about that single comment, "Keep telling our story." If he went silent now, he wouldn't just be protecting himself, he would be validating the power of intimidation. He would be proving that in Southwood, the powerful can make the truth disappear. That realization felt like a punch to the gut. The fear was real, terrifyingly real, but the alternative, the betrayal of his own vision, felt worse. He knew he couldn't put his family in immediate physical danger. He had to be smarter, more careful, but he wouldn't stop. He made a vow: he wouldn't film his mother or Tiana, and he would take every precaution to conceal his identity. But he would keep the video up. He wouldn't let them silence the evidence. Jordan sat back at his laptop, not to take the video down, but to draft a terse, anonymous response to the media inquiries. He wrote, "The footage is offered freely for non-profit distribution. The source will remain anonymous. The story is about the barracks, not the camera operator." He pressed send, his finger hovering over the mouse. The risk was enormous. He felt the weight of it, the cold clarity that telling the truth wasn't an easy moral victory, it was a risky, ongoing fight. He was 15, and he had just chosen to step back into the battle, armed with nothing but an old camera and an unshakable sense of duty to the invisible people around him. He needed skills, protection, and knowledge. He needed help. The decision to stay in the fight had been made, but Jordan quickly realized courage alone wouldn't win it. He was a kid with a powerful story and a rusty toolkit. The professional journalist who contacted him, while eager to use his footage, treated him with a condescending professionalism that made him feel like a source to be exploited, not a colleague to be mentored. He desperately needed to learn the rules of the game, the techniques of filmmaking, the ethics of sourcing, and the essential skill of self-protection. The answer came not through the national media deluge, but from a quiet, handwritten note tucked into his anonymous email inbox. It was from a man named Mr. Harris, an independent documentary filmmaker who had been working on community-based projects in Southwood for decades, operating far below the radar of the big news networks. "Kid, your eye is honest. Your camera work is shaky and your audio is terrible, but your heart is right. You're playing a dangerous game without a playbook. Come see me. I'm not selling anything. I'm just fixing a light in the community center's back office. Ask for the guy with the bad knees." Jordan hesitated for a day, the note feeling both like a beacon and a trap. But the memory of the black sedan and the weight of Monique's worry forced his hand. He went to the community center after school, his handycam strapped tight inside his backpack. Mr. Harris was exactly as described. An older, weary man with permanently stained hands and a pair of knees that cracked when he stood up. His office was a claustrophobic box filled with ancient equipment, stacks of tape reels, and the faint smell of dust and coffee. He didn't ask Jordan's name, or even his age. He just looked at the camera and smiled. "That's an artifact, son," Mr. Harris said, pointing to the handycam. "But it's also proof that the best camera is the one you have in your hand. Now let's talk about light." And so began Jordan's intensive, unorthodox mentorship. Mr. Harris didn't teach him theory, he taught him survival. Rule number 1, protect the source, and that includes you, Mr. Harris drilled into him. He taught Jordan about encrypted messaging, about creating layers of digital separation, and about how to film without making direct eye contact with people he didn't want to engage. He stressed the ethical necessity of confirming facts and the profound difference between reporting a tragedy and sensationalizing a crisis. "You're not a vulture, Jordan. You're a mirror. Hold it steady." Next came the craft. Jordan learned that shaky didn't mean authentic. It often meant distracting. Mr. Harris taught him to use the natural environment as a tripod. A wall, a lamppost, the edge of a trash receptacle, to stabilize his shots. He learned to follow the light, understanding how the changing sun could elevate a mundane scene into something dramatically charged. He learned advanced editing techniques on Mr. Harris's professional grade system, realizing that good storytelling involved more than just cutting out the boring bits. It involved pacing, rhythm, and the strategic use of silence. "Editing is where you find the soul of the footage," Mr. Harris insisted. "You shot 50 minutes of raw reality. You have to spend 4 hours to find the 2 minutes of distilled truth. That's the work." Jordan started filming with a purpose he'd never had before. He began working on a series of videos, not just single viral hits. One project, which he titled The Unseen Workers, exposed a systemic problem of local corruption regarding maintenance contracts, contrasting the millions the city paid with the actual substandard work being done on housing projects. It was a cold, forensic look at negligence, backed up by solid documentary evidence. But he didn't stop at exposé. Inspired by Mr. Harris's mandate to hold up a mirror, Jordan also filmed positive, intentional stories that the mainstream media always ignored. He filmed Ellis Place, a small local diner that secretly fed neighborhood kids whose parents had been laid off. He filmed the impromptu tutoring sessions held by high school students at the library. He was intentionally giving voices to the voiceless, not just the victims. His confidence swelled, not with arrogance but with competence. He was no longer fumbling with an old camera. He was wielding a sophisticated communication tool. He learned how to frame an interview, how to lead with an open question, and how to hold the camera steady even when the subject was crying or angry. He was no longer Jordan Davis, the quiet, worried kid stumbling into a story. He was a storyteller, a nascent journalist whose work was guided by rigor and integrity. The mentorship was a lifeline. Mr. Harris became the shield and the guide Jordan desperately needed, helping him navigate the continued low-level threats from anonymous accounts and the demands of greedy media outlets. They want sensation, Jordan. You give them facts, Mr. Harris advised him. They want a drama queen. You give them a dedicated craftsman. You earn credibility one frame at a time. By the time summer ended and school resumed, Jordan's transformation was complete. He still had the old handycam, but he had mastered its limits. He had refined his eye, hardened his resolve, and most importantly, learned that telling the truth isn't just a moral choice, it's a disciplined craft that demands skill, practice, and the unwavering commitment to the people whose stories he was sworn to tell. Jordan's work was no longer confined to the local Southwood forums. The combination of his raw, authentic perspective and Mr. Harris's technical guidance had created something undeniable. His video series, Southwood Unfiltered, had become a staple for regional reporters looking for ground-level truth, but it was the deep-dive exposé on the housing maintenance corruption, the one Jordan titled "Where Did the Money Go?", that finally breached the national barrier. The documentary piece was cold, factual, and damning. It juxtaposed grainy footage of crumbling stairwells and leaky ceilings with beautifully animated graphics detailing the city's inflated budget line items. It wasn't emotionally manipulative, it was a journalistic indictment. It caught the eye of Horizon News Network, HNN, a reputable national media outlet known for its award-winning documentary division. The call came directly to Mr. Harris, who immediately set up the necessary layers of protection and privacy for Jordan. HNN wasn't interested in a viral clip, they were interested in the storyteller. They were looking for a fresh, authentic voice to cover issues of urban poverty and resilience, and Jordan, anonymous yet powerful, was the perfect candidate. The offer was unprecedented. HNN wanted to license Jordan's current portfolio and, more significantly, they wanted to invite him to present his work at the upcoming National Youth Media Summit in Washington, D.C. They promised to maintain his anonymity and cover all expenses. Jordan felt a surge of professional validation mixed with sheer terror. He was used to the anonymity of the back office. Standing on a national stage felt like stepping naked into the spotlight. "They want you because you're honest, Jordan," Mr. Harris told him, checking the settings on a borrowed professional microphone. "But they also want you because you're a narrative. You have to be ready to control that narrative." The preparation was intense. Jordan had to condense months of raw experience into a 15-minute presentation. He chose to focus not on the drama of the evictions, but on the power of the frame. His presentation centered on his belief that cameras aren't just recording devices. They are tools of equity, giving a voice weight and a place definition. The summit itself was a dizzying world of polished confidence, expensive equipment, and young media creators talking about clicks and monetization. Jordan, dressed in the only suit his mother could afford to rent, felt like an alien. Yet, when he stepped onto the stage, the spotlight of physical heat on his face, the nervousness vanished. He held up his old handycam. "This cost me $5 at a yard sale," he began, his voice steady. "And it has exposed corruption, challenged City Hall, and helped hundreds of people stay in their homes. It's proof that money is not a requirement for truth. Integrity is." He played a carefully edited reel of his work. Moments of community resilience, the faces of children, and the stark visual contrast between government neglect and neighborhood love. His presentation was a triumph. The room, filled with jaded young professionals, was utterly silent, then exploded into applause. The immediate consequence of the attention was the realization of his platform's immense power and responsibility. His videos weren't just conversation starters anymore. They were driving legislative agendas and forcing city officials to resign. He could spark real, tangible change, but that power came with a crushing scrutiny. Every shaky shot, every edit, every word in his video descriptions would now be dissected by lawyers, politicians, and a critical national audience. The pressure wasn't just external, it started to strain his life at home. Monique was proud, terrified, and increasingly isolated from her son's double life. He still wouldn't tell her the full extent of his activities, protecting her from the details of the threats, but the late nights and secretive phone calls were a constant worry. "You're doing amazing things, Jordan," she said one night, ironing his school uniform while he edited a piece on his laptop. "But you are 15. You have to eat. You have to sleep. You have to pass high school. This This career is going to eat you alive if you don't find a balance. His school life was in shambles. He was consistently late, exhausted, and struggling to keep up with assignments that now seemed petty compared to exposing fraud. He felt perpetually torn between the two worlds, the immediate, vital importance of his investigative work and the long-term necessity of his education. He looked at the new equipment H&N had sent him, a sleek, modern professional camera, and then at his old, beloved Handycam sitting next to it. The new camera felt heavy with expectation, the old one with personal history. Jordan had earned his big break, but standing at the precipice of national recognition, he wasn't thinking about fame or money. He was thinking about how much he was risking and how much he still had to lose. The spotlight felt less like a reward and more like a permanent, blazing interrogation lamp. He had to figure out how to stand in that light without being consumed by it. The National Youth Media Summit had done more than validate Jordan. It had turned him into a commodity. After his presentation, major media producers and digital content executives flocked to him, eager to capitalize on his authentic urban narrative. They didn't just want his footage. They wanted to mold him, to polish the raw edges of his work until it was palatable and, more importantly, clickable. The meetings Jordan fielded, always with Mr. Harris carefully buffering him, became a grueling exercise in defending his integrity. One well-known online producer, slick and smiling, laid out a strategy that made Jordan's stomach turn. "Jordan, you're brilliant, but you're leaving money on the table," the producer said, leaning across the coffee table. "We need conflict, drama, villains. You film a landlord-tenant dispute? Don't just show the argument. Show the screaming, the crying kids, the cops. Use the tension. Stop with the boring budget graphs and the unseen worker stuff. Sensationalize it. We can get you 5 million views a week if you give the audience what they want. A spectacle." Jordan's refusal was immediate and absolute. "My camera is a mirror, not a carnival sideshow," he stated, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I didn't film Mrs. Rodriguez to get views. I filmed her to get justice. If I start twisting the truth for clicks, I become the problem I'm trying to expose." His insistence on accuracy, context, and respect for his subjects puzzled the media professionals. They saw his refusal as naive, a flaw that would limit his brand growth. Jordan knew it was the foundation of his mission. He wasn't aiming for viral fame. He was aiming for ethical impact. This ethical stand inevitably put him in conflict with the ecosystem of digital fame. A rival online personality who specialized in highly edited, emotionally manipulative short-form videos about urban hardship, took aim at Jordan. This personality, known as The Realist, publicly mocked Jordan, calling him too soft and an amateur who needs to learn how to hook an audience. The attacks were personal and vicious. The rival personality questioned Jordan's credibility, suggesting his anonymity was a cover for shoddy journalism and that his focus on positive stories was a cop-out. The comments section under The Realist's video quickly devolved into a toxic debate, tearing at the integrity Jordan had worked so hard to establish. The backlash was frustrating. Jordan had faced down city officials, but being dragged through the mud by another content creator felt surprisingly painful. Mr. Harris offered Jordan simple, clear advice. Don't argue with a fool. Give them the truth. Instead of engaging in a digital shouting match, Jordan chose to respond with his work. He decided to film a live, unscripted documentary piece, a genuine and immediate counter-narrative to the sensationalism. He spent a week filming various local youth groups involved in constructive, positive activities, a robotics club using salvaged parts to build a community weather station, and a group of high school seniors organizing a literacy drive for younger kids. He streamed the final piece live from the Southwood Community Center on a Friday evening. The documentary was stark and beautiful. It showed young people achieving real, complex things, not simple, tear-jerking triumphs but genuine, hard-won stories of dedication and success. The centerpiece was an interview with the captain of the robotics team, who spoke eloquently about problem-solving and perseverance, entirely bypassing the usual tropes of victimhood or sudden stardom. The effect was instantaneous and transformative. The video quickly gathered a different kind of momentum. Viewers appreciated the authenticity. Community leaders and educators shared it widely, praising its honest depiction of their students. The praise he earned felt substantial, built on respect, not on shock value. The Realist's critique faded into background noise. Jordan had chosen to fight sensationalism not with more drama, but with integrity and depth. He reaffirmed his mission, to use the lens to show the fullness of his community, the hardship and the hope, the struggle and the triumph. Standing by his principles came with a cost. His view count wasn't as explosively high as the producer had promised, but his reputation was solidified. He had consciously traded fleeting fame for lasting credibility. Jordan walked away from the negotiation table that night, exhausted but certain. He was still a kid with a camera, but he had proven he had the strength to look through the lens and prioritize the truth of the story over the profit of the spectacle. Jordan's commitment to genuine, community-driven storytelling ultimately redefined his success. He hadn't chased views, he had built trust. That foundation allowed him to make the leap from being the storyteller to becoming a story facilitator. He realized the true power of the lens wasn't just in his hands, but in its ability to empower all the hands in Southwood. The idea was simple yet profound. If the camera could change his life, it could change others too. With Mr. Harris's help and the modest licensing fees he'd earned, Jordan launched the Southwood Lens Workshop. It wasn't a fancy organization. It operated out of the same cramped back office in the community center where Mr. Harris had mentored him. The equipment was a mix of his old Handycam, the professional gear H&N had sent, and a pile of donated, slightly archaic smartphones. Jordan's students were a diverse group of kids aged 12 to 18. Some shy like he used to be and others bursting with unchanneled energy. Jordan didn't teach them how to go viral. He taught them the rules of the craft: focus, composition, and ethical witnessing. The most important thing you'll ever film isn't a riot or a political scandal, he told them on the first day, standing proudly in front of a whiteboard covered in his shaky handwriting. It's the person you usually walk right past. It's the corner you think you know. We're not here to film victims. We're here to film stakeholders. Every single person in this neighborhood has a story that deserves a professional frame. He mentored aspiring young journalists in the fundamental difference between showing up to take a picture and showing up to understand a community. They filmed everything: the pride of a local merchant opening a new business, the intricate, careful work of the elderly people tending their community garden, and the complex process of local council meetings that affected their homes. The videos they produced were raw, diverse, and collectively, they painted a portrait of Southwood more nuanced than any newspaper article ever could. The workshop had an immediate positive effect on the community. For the first time, kids felt like their perspectives mattered, not just as background characters but as the primary narrators. When a local utility company tried to cut off service to a housing block without proper notice, it wasn't Jordan who broke the story, it was 14-year-old Marcus, whose smartphone footage and quiet, respectful interview with a resident forced the company to restore power within hours. Jordan simply guided the edit. His role was shifting from protagonist to director. He found a new balance in his own life. The urgency of being the only voice was gone, replaced by the fulfilling work of cultivating many. He was still pulled between his schoolwork and his career, but Monique saw the change. He was tired, yes, but he was also energized, focused, and authentically happy. His work was no longer a secret burden. It was a shared mission. One warm spring evening, the story came full circle, winding back to the most important person in his life: his little sister, Tiana. She was starring in her 5th grade school play, a small, end-of-year production about local history. Jordan, who usually missed Tiana's events because of his late-night editing or secretive meetings, had cleared his schedule. He set up his tripod in the back of the auditorium, not with his heavy, professional equipment, but with the old, trusty Handycam. As Tiana stepped onto the stage, dressed in a borrowed, oversized costume, she looked out into the half-dark audience. She was initially nervous, her body language stiff. But as she began her lines, her voice steady and clear, a bright, confident energy emerged. She was captivating. Jordan lifted the camera to his eye. He didn't just record her, he framed her. He focused on the genuine sparkle in her eyes, the proud set of her shoulders, and the way the cheap stage light made her small, determined face shine. As he watched her through the small viewfinder, a profound realization washed over him. The camera wasn't just a weapon against corruption or a shield against fear. It was a tool that allowed him to truly see the people he loved, to recognize their strength, and to elevate their importance. He wasn't capturing life's failures, he was capturing its potential. He slowly lowered the camera, not needing the recording to preserve the moment. He just smiled, a deep, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He had started his journey as a kid who felt powerless, seeking control in a chaotic world. Now he knew where true power lay. It wasn't in sensationalism or celebrity. It was in vision, and in using that vision to give others the courage to step out of the shadows. The voice wasn't his anymore, it was theirs. He just held the frame steady. The lens doesn't lie, and neither should we. Dear viewer, if you've watched up to this point, thank you for your support. I have a small request. If you enjoy my stories, you can subscribe to the channel, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts about the stories in the comments. Enjoy watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.